A cowboy saw her turn down 3 job offers. He said, "What kind of work are you looking for?" Clara had always been different from most people she knew. She didn't rush through life chasing money or prestige. She wanted something that mattered, something that made her feel alive when she woke up each morning. That morning, as the first light of the sun spilled across the quiet Texas countryside, she tightened the straps of her worn backpack and stepped out of the small motel room. The air was cool, tinged with the smell of dew on dry grass and the faint scent of coffee drifting from a nearby cafe. Her feet crunched against the gravel as she walked toward the town's main street. It was a sleepy place, the kind of town where everyone knew each other by name, and where the old wooden buildings leaned slightly as if sharing secrets over the decades. Clara had been here only once before, months ago, but it had left a soft impression on her. The way the sunlight hit the porch of the general store, the sound of a distant train whistle, and the warm smiles of people who greeted her without asking where she came from. Clara's life had been a series of moves, a patchwork of temporary jobs and borrowed apartments. She was skilled, hardworking, and adaptable, but she had learned something important along the way. Taking the first opportunity that came along often left her feeling hollow. She had done it before, and the regret had been heavy. Now she promised herself she would be more selective. She wouldn't let desperation decide her path. That morning, she had already turned down 3 job offers. The first was at a small diner just outside town. The smell of frying bacon and the clatter of dishes had been tempting, and the woman who interviewed her had smiled warmly, offering a position as a server with a decent hourly wage. But Clara had politely declined. She didn't want to spend her days standing behind a counter, serving coffee and scrambled eggs, wondering if her life was slipping through routine and monotony. The second offer came from a tiny retail shop that sold handcrafted goods and souvenirs. The shop owner was kind and patient, explaining that the work wasn't difficult and the hours were flexible. Clara had tried to imagine herself there, arranging shelves and helping tourists pick out gifts, but the vision felt empty. She wanted work that left her feeling proud, that let her see tangible results from her effort, not just neatly stacked shelves. So once again she said no, hoping her honesty wouldn't come off as arrogance. The third job was perhaps the hardest to refuse. A nearby farm needed help with chores, tending animals, and some office work. The pay was fair, and the idea of being outdoors all day was appealing. But when Clara considered it, she realized the work didn't align with her vision for herself. She didn't just want to work with her hands. She wanted to contribute in a way that challenged her mind as well. She needed something more than just physical labor. And so, after long consideration, she declined that offer too, despite the friendly encouragement of the farm owner, who said she would be missed if she didn't accept. By late morning, Clara felt a mix of relief and uncertainty. Relief because she had stayed true to her instincts. Uncertainty because the day stretched ahead like an empty road and she had no idea what might happen next. She walked slowly down the main street, letting her eyes wander over the buildings and storefronts. The streets were quiet, with only the occasional car passing by, kicking up tiny clouds of dust. Birds chirped lazily in the trees, and a faint breeze rustled through the leaves. Clara's mind wandered as she walked. She thought about all the people she had met in her travels, the friends who had drifted away, the strangers who had touched her life in small ways, the mentors who had given her advice she would never forget. She realized that even in small towns like this, life had its own rhythm and lessons. She just had to be willing to notice them. As she turned a corner, her eyes fell on a roadside cafe. Its sign swung gently in the breeze, painted letters slightly faded from the sun, reading simply, "Mabel's Cafe." A few cars were parked outside, and through the windows, Clara could see people sitting at wooden tables, sipping coffee and chatting quietly. It was the kind of place where everyone seemed to know everyone else, yet it radiated a welcoming warmth that made her hesitate only for a moment before stepping inside. The cafe smelled of fresh coffee, warm bread, and a hint of cinnamon. A bell tinkled as she opened the door, and the few patrons inside glanced up, then returned to their conversations. Clara found a small table by the window and sat down, placing her backpack carefully beside her. She ordered a cup of black coffee, strong and simple, and watched the world outside the window as she sipped it slowly. Her attention was caught by a man sitting at a table nearby, just outside on the small patio. He He was tall, with broad shoulders and a calm presence that seemed to fill the space without effort. His hat shaded his face, but his eyes were bright and curious. He leaned back in his chair, watching her with interest but not in a way that felt intrusive. There was something genuine about his gaze, something that made Clara feel less like a stranger in the town and more like a visitor who might belong here, at least for a little while. After a few minutes, he stood up and approached her table. Clara felt a brief flicker of nervousness. She wasn't used to strangers speaking to her so directly, especially in a way that didn't feel transactional or superficial. The man smiled, a simple, honest smile, and said, "I saw you turn down a few job offers this morning." "I've got to ask, what kind of work are you looking for?" Clara blinked, surprised. His question was direct, but it carried no judgment. It wasn't a line or a trick, it was just genuine curiosity. She hesitated, unsure if she should answer. Most people would have told her she was being difficult, or that she should just take what she could get. But there was something about this man, something steady, grounded, and unpretentious, that made her feel safe enough to speak. She took a deep breath and said, "I'm looking for work that matters, something where I can contribute, where my effort counts, and where I can grow. I don't want just a paycheck. I want purpose." The man nodded slowly, as if he understood more than she had said aloud. He didn't interrupt or try to convince her otherwise. He simply leaned back, resting one hand on the table, and said, "I see. That's a rare way to think about work these days. Most people just settle, but you're looking for something real." For the first time that day, Clara felt a sense of relief that had nothing to do with the jobs she had turned down. She felt understood. She felt that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't chasing something impossible. The conversation continued naturally, flowing like a gentle river. The man, whose name was Hank, she learned, shared stories about his life on a nearby ranch. He spoke about the work, the routines, and the satisfaction that came from seeing results from honest effort. He didn't preach, didn't try to impose his path on her. He simply described a life built on integrity and patience. Clara listened intently. She asked questions, curious but cautious, and Hank answered with sincerity. The more he spoke, the more she realized that he wasn't offering a job. He was offering perspective, a way to think about work and life that she had rarely encountered. And in that moment, as sunlight streamed across the cafe window and dust motes danced in the light, Clara felt a spark of possibility. It wasn't a spark of immediate answers, but the spark of clarity. The realization that she didn't have to accept the first opportunity just to survive, that she could wait, that she could find something meaningful. And perhaps in the most unexpected ways, the answer might come to her, sometimes from a stranger in a cafe, sometimes from the quiet rhythm of a small town, sometimes from the willingness to ask the right questions and listen with an open heart. By the time Clara finished her coffee, she felt lighter than she had all week. The uncertainty that had weighed on her steps since morning seemed softer, more like a gentle push forward rather than a heavy burden. She thanked Hank for the conversation, for the question, for the perspective. He tipped his hat, smiled, and said, "You'll find it, Clara. Just keep looking for the work that matters. It's out there, I promise." As she stepped back onto the gravel street, backpack on her shoulder and the warmth of the sun on her face, Clara felt a quiet excitement. She didn't know exactly what awaited her or how long it would take to find the work she wanted. But she knew she had taken the first real step, not toward a job, but toward purpose. And sometimes that was the most important journey of all. Clara's steps carried her away from the cafe, but her mind lingered there, on the conversation she had just had with Hank. There was something in the way he listened, truly listened, that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't in a long time. Most people she met were polite, maybe curious, but Hank's interest had depth. It wasn't fleeting or superficial. It was grounded, as if he had all the time in the world and nothing else mattered in that moment but understanding her. She walked slowly along the main street, letting the rhythm of her footsteps match the calm she felt inside. The town had a kind of quiet charm that she had never noticed before, not really noticed. Each building, each weathered sign seemed to tell a story. She imagined the lives of the people inside, the conversations they were having, the small joys and struggles they carried. The thought made her heart feel full and strangely hopeful. Clara reached a small park at the edge of the town. The grass was slightly overgrown, but the old swing sets and benches had a history, a sense of permanence that contrasted sharply with her own transient life. She sat on a bench under a sprawling oak tree, her backpack at her feet, and tried to sort through her thoughts. The world of work she had been pursuing felt so rigid, so transactional. Each job she had turned down was safe, predictable, and practical, yet none of them gave her a sense of meaning. Hank's question echoed in her mind. "What kind of work are you looking for?" It was simple, yet it carried a weight that she hadn't expected. She realized that she hadn't asked herself that question with honesty for a long time. She had chased paychecks, survival, convenience, but never the type of work that made her feel alive. She wanted work that challenged her mind, tested her skills, and let her make a difference, even if it was small. She wanted a sense of contribution, a sense of pride in her efforts, and the feeling that what she did mattered to someone beyond herself. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of horses approaching. Clara looked up to see a small group of riders crossing the street at the far end of the park. Their boots clomped against the ground, leather saddles creaked, and the horses' tails swished in the morning air. One of the riders slowed, and her gaze met Hank's once again. He smiled and waved, tipping his hat. Clara smiled back, a wave of warmth rising in her chest. The next few hours passed slowly but meaningfully. Clara wandered through the town, taking in the sights, the smells, and the sounds. She visited a small bookstore, leafing through worn pages of novels and journals, enjoying the quiet and the scent of old paper. She stopped at a small bakery, buying a loaf of fresh bread and nibbling on it as she walked along the side streets. Everything seemed to hold a gentle rhythm, a sense of life that was steady and predictable, yet comforting. When the afternoon sun grew warmer, she found herself back at Mabel's cafe. The bell above the door tinkled as she entered, and Hank looked up from a corner table, his expression welcoming. He patted the chair across from him, and she hesitated for only a moment before sitting. "I thought I might find you here," he said with a quiet laugh. "Seems like this place has a way of drawing people in." Clara smiled, feeling more at ease than she had in months. "It's peaceful here," she admitted, "and I guess I needed to think." Hank nodded. "Thinking is good. Sometimes we spend too much time rushing, trying to fit into places that aren't meant for us. But when we stop and reflect, we start to see what's really important." Clara looked at him, intrigued. "How do you know what's important?" she asked. Hank leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant for a moment. "I've learned from experience," he said softly. "Work, life, everything, it's about finding what matters to you and pursuing it with honesty. Some people chase what looks good on the surface, but they forget to ask themselves if it truly feeds their heart and mind." Clara listened intently. His words resonated deeply. She thought about the jobs she had turned down that morning and realized that each of them would have been convenient, safe, and easy. Yet none would have given her the satisfaction she sought. She wanted work that made her feel alive, and she wanted to find a place where her efforts could make a difference. Hank seemed to sense her thoughts. "You're looking for purpose," he said simply, "not just a paycheck or something to pass the time. You want to contribute, to feel that your efforts matter." Clara nodded. "Exactly," she said. "I don't want to waste my life doing things that feel meaningless. I want to work hard, but I want it to count for something." Hank smiled, a mix of admiration and understanding in his eyes. "You're rare," he said. "Most people settle too soon. They take the first opportunity because it's easy or safe, but they lose themselves in the process. You, on the other hand, are willing to wait. That's brave." The conversation continued, flowing naturally and effortlessly. Hank shared stories from the ranch where he worked, describing the mornings spent tending to the animals, the evenings under open skies, and the satisfaction of seeing results from honest effort. Clara asked questions, genuinely curious, and Hank answered with patience and sincerity. She learned that the ranch needed people who were adaptable, willing to work with both their hands and minds. There was a balance of physical labor, planning, and problem-solving. Tasks were varied, and no 2 days were exactly alike. Hank spoke of the challenges openly: long hours, early mornings, unpredictable weather, but also of the rewards: seeing a herd thrive, helping a community, contributing to something larger than oneself. Clara felt a spark of possibility ignite within her. The idea of work that mattered, work that challenged her and allowed her to grow, felt tangible for the first time in years. It wasn't just a dream anymore. It was something she could reach for if she had courage and patience. Hours passed, and the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the cafe. Clara realized she had been talking and listening for hours without noticing the time. She felt lighter, more focused, and strangely hopeful. The uncertainty that had weighed on her earlier had softened, replaced by clarity. She now knew what she truly wanted and had a direction in which to move. Before leaving, Clara thanked Hank for the conversation. "I don't even know how to explain how much this means," she said sincerely. "I haven't felt this clear in a long time." Hank tipped his hat again, a quiet smile on his face. "You'll find it," he said. "The right work, the right place, it's out there. Sometimes it takes a while to see it, but if you stay true to yourself, you'll find it. Just keep asking questions and listening to your instincts." Clara nodded, feeling a sense of determination. She had spent so much time moving from place to place, turning down jobs that didn't fit, doubting herself, and wondering if she would ever find something meaningful. But now, with Hank's guidance and her own clarity, she felt ready to face the unknown. As she walked back to her motel to rest for the night, Clara thought about the day in its entirety. The towns she had passed through, the jobs she had refused, the quiet strength she had felt within herself, and the conversation with a cowboy who had simply asked one question. That single question had opened a door she hadn't even realized was closed, and it had given her a sense of hope she hadn't felt in months. Clara lay in bed that night, listening to the soft hum of the town outside her window, and let herself imagine what might come next. She pictured mornings spent on the ranch, learning new skills, contributing to meaningful work, and meeting people who valued her efforts. She imagined evenings under the open sky, the stars bright and endless above her, reflecting on the day's accomplishments. The vision felt real, attainable, and worth pursuing. For the first time in a long time, Clara didn't worry about making the right decision or settling for something convenient. She trusted herself, trusted her instincts, and trusted that the right opportunity would come if she remained patient and true to her values. She realized that waiting for meaningful work wasn't a sign of weakness or indecision. It was a commitment to herself, a promise that she wouldn't settle for less than what mattered. As sleep took her that night, Clara carried with her a quiet determination, a spark of hope, and the memory of a cowboy who had simply asked a question, one question that had the power to change the course of her life. Clara woke the next morning to the soft glow of sunlight streaming through her motel window. The town was still quiet, with only the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze and the distant hum of a train whistle. She stretched, feeling a strange combination of excitement and nervousness. The conversation with Hank from the previous day kept replaying in her mind. She had never met anyone like him, someone who could see the heart behind her hesitation, the purpose behind her choices, and respond without judgment. She decided to take a walk before breakfast, hoping to clear her mind and think about what came next. The air was crisp, carrying the smell of dry earth and morning dew. Birds chirped above her, their songs echoing softly through the streets. Clara found herself wandering toward the outskirts of town, where the fields began and the fences marked the edges of open land. She imagined what it would be like to work somewhere like that, wide open spaces, fresh air, and meaningful tasks that challenged both mind and body. As she walked, she reflected on the jobs she had turned down over the past few days. Each one had seemed safe at first glance. A diner, a shop, a farm, they were practical, familiar, and unassuming. Yet something about each offer had felt wrong for her. It wasn't the pay or the hours or even the people, it was the lack of purpose. Clara realized that she had spent too much of her life settling for security over meaning. She wanted more. She wanted work that mattered, work that would make her feel alive and proud. The thought made her smile. She had spent years doubting herself, wondering if she was too picky or too idealistic. But now, standing in the quiet morning, she felt a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in a long time. Her standards were not flaws. They were a compass guiding her toward something truly valuable. She didn't want to waste her life doing work that didn't resonate with her, and she was finally ready to pursue something meaningful, even if it required patience and courage. By mid-morning, Clara returned to Mabel's cafe. The bell above the door tinkled as she entered, and she spotted Hank immediately, seated at his usual corner table. His eyes lit up when he saw her, and he gestured to the chair across from him. Clara approached, a small smile on her face, feeling a sense of comfort in his presence. "You're early," Hank said, his voice warm and steady. "I wanted to think more about what you said yesterday," Clara replied, "and I realized something important. I don't just want a job." I want work that makes me feel useful, that challenges me, and where I can see the results of my efforts. Hank nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already knew. I thought so, he said. You've been searching for something real, not just convenient. That's a rare quality. Most people would settle long before they find it. Clara felt a surge of determination. I'm ready to stop wandering aimlessly, she said. I want to find a place where I can contribute and grow. I know it won't be easy, but I'm willing to work hard. Hank smiled, a mixture of pride and encouragement in his expression. There might be a place for you nearby, he said. It's a ranch that needs someone capable, adaptable, and willing to work with both their hands and mind. They have office tasks, physical work, and a chance to really see the impact of what you do. I think it could be a good fit for you. Clara's heart quickened. The idea sounded perfect, challenging, meaningful, and tangible. She leaned forward, listening closely as Hank explained more about the ranch, its operations, and the people who worked there. He described the balance of tasks, from tending animals to managing schedules, from repairing fences to coordinating deliveries. It was a life that demanded resilience, problem-solving, and dedication, but it offered the reward of visible results and a sense of purpose. I want to try it, Clara said after a moment, her voice firm but calm. I want to see if I can fit in there, if I can make a difference. Hank nodded. Good. I can introduce you to the owner or at least guide you there. They're looking for someone dependable, and from what I've seen, you'll be exactly what they need. Over the next few days, Clara prepared for her journey to the ranch. She packed her belongings carefully, choosing practical clothing suitable for both outdoor work and office tasks. She reviewed basic skills she might need, organization, animal care, scheduling, and readied herself mentally for the challenges ahead. Every step felt purposeful. Unlike before, when she moved from town to town without direction, now she had a goal, a vision, and a plan. On the morning of her departure, Hank met her outside the cafe. His horse was saddled and ready, though he encouraged her to travel by car if she preferred. Clara appreciated his thoughtfulness and chose the car, feeling comfort in the simplicity and reliability of the vehicle. The drive to the ranch was quiet but scenic. Fields stretched endlessly on either side of the road, dotted with grazing animals and clusters of trees. Clara felt a sense of anticipation building with each mile. She thought about the life she was stepping into, a life of hard work, learning, and real contribution. She imagined mornings waking up to the smell of fresh hay and the sound of animals, days filled with tasks that mattered, and evenings under the open sky reflecting on what she had accomplished. When they arrived, Clara was struck by the scale and beauty of the ranch. The land was vast and green, dotted with barns, pastures, and the occasional windmill. Horses trotted in the distance, and the lowing of cattle created a sense of calm rhythm. The ranch felt alive, not just with animals but with purpose. Every corner seemed to hum with activity, and Clara realized that she was finally in a place where her work could truly have impact. Hank led her to the main office, where the ranch owner, a kind but no-nonsense woman named Marla, greeted her. Marla shook Clara's hand firmly and gave her a quick tour of the facilities. She explained the expectations, the tasks, and the opportunities for growth. Clara listened intently, absorbing every detail. She felt a mix of nervousness and excitement, knowing that she would be challenged, but also knowing that this challenge was exactly what she had been searching for. Over the next few days, Clara settled into the ranch. She learned quickly, picking up tasks from feeding animals to organizing schedules. She discovered that her skills were valuable in multiple ways. Her ability to plan, coordinate, and communicate complemented the physical labor required on the ranch. She found satisfaction in seeing the results of her efforts, whether it was a barn neatly organized, a field prepared for planting, or animals well cared for. Hank visited occasionally, checking in on her progress. He offered encouragement and advice but never took over or imposed his methods. His presence was a reminder of the conversation that had changed her perspective, that the right work was out there, waiting for those who were patient, observant, and willing to pursue it. Clara began to understand the deeper meaning behind her journey. It wasn't just about finding a job that paid the bills. It was about finding a place where she could make a difference, where her efforts mattered to the community and the land. She realized that meaningful work required patience, resilience, and self-awareness, and that the right opportunity often appeared when one stayed true to themselves. One afternoon, as she walked through a pasture lined with wildflowers, Clara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She thought about the cafe, the conversation with Hank, and the days of careful reflection that had led her to this point. Each choice, each refusal of convenience, had brought her closer to the life she truly wanted. She felt a sense of gratitude for the patience she had cultivated and the courage it had taken to follow her instincts. By evening, Clara stood on a hill overlooking the ranch. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields and bathing the land in golden light. She felt a profound sense of satisfaction, knowing that her work had purpose and that she was contributing to something bigger than herself. For the first time in years, she felt truly aligned with her path, confident that she was exactly where she needed to be. Clara understood that the journey was not over. There would be challenges ahead, long hours and moments of doubt. But she also knew that she had discovered something invaluable: the ability to recognize meaningful work, the courage to pursue it, and the patience to wait for the right opportunity. She realized that life's most rewarding experiences often came to those who were willing to listen, observe, and act with integrity. And as night fell, Clara felt a deep sense of peace. The stars began to twinkle above the vast Texas sky, each one a reminder of the endless possibilities ahead. She knew that the work she had chosen would shape her, challenge her, and teach her lessons that would last a lifetime. But she also knew that it would give her something even more important: a sense of purpose, belonging, and fulfillment that could not be found in convenience or safety. Clara had arrived at the ranch not just as an employee, but as someone ready to embrace a life of meaningful work, guided by her instincts, her values, and the wisdom of a cowboy who had simply asked one question. "What kind of work are you looking for?" Clara woke before sunrise, as she had grown accustomed to on the ranch. The sky was still a soft shade of pink and gold, and the air carried the crisp freshness of morning dew. She pulled on her worn boots and a thick flannel shirt, ready for another day of meaningful work. Over the past weeks, she had grown stronger, more confident, and more in tune with the rhythms of the ranch. Every task, from feeding animals to organizing supplies, had become a lesson in patience, attention, and dedication. The sound of cattle lowing in the distance and the faint whinny of horses greeted her as she stepped outside. The land stretched endlessly around her, alive with possibility and activity. Clara took a deep breath, inhaling the earthy scent of hay, soil, and animals. She smiled, feeling a sense of belonging she had never known before. The ranch had become more than a workplace. It was a community, a living organism where her effort mattered, and where each action contributed to a greater purpose. Her morning began with a familiar routine. She checked the water troughs, ensuring each animal had fresh water. She helped gather eggs from the chickens and feed the calves, careful to handle each animal with respect and attention. These small acts, once routine, now carried meaning. Clara felt satisfaction in the rhythm of her work, the way each task connected to the next, and the tangible results of her effort. The animals thrived under her care, and the land seemed to respond to her presence. After the chores, Clara moved to the office area. She reviewed schedules, managed deliveries, and coordinated tasks for the day. She discovered that the skills she had honed over years of temporary jobs, organization, problem-solving, and attention to detail, were invaluable here. Yet unlike previous work, these tasks were not isolated or meaningless. They had a purpose. Each list she created, each phone call she made, ensured that the ranch ran smoothly and that her coworkers could focus on other important duties. Clara began to understand how her mind and body could work together to make a real difference. By mid-morning, Hank arrived for his routine check-in. He had a quiet presence, the kind that brought reassurance without intrusion. "How's everything going?" he asked, glancing over the fields with a careful eye. Clara smiled, feeling pride in her voice. "It's going well. The animals are healthy and the schedules are running smoothly. I'm learning so much every day." Hank nodded, a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. "You've adapted quickly. I knew you would. It's not just about working hard, it's about understanding the land, the animals, and the people. You're doing more than expected." Clara felt warmth spread through her chest. Hank's words were encouraging, yet grounded. He didn't overpraise, he simply recognized effort and growth. That recognition, combined with her own sense of accomplishment, reinforced her belief that she had made the right choice. The days on the ranch passed in a steady rhythm, filled with a mixture of physical labor, planning, and problem-solving. Clara found joy in each new challenge. One day, she helped repair a section of fence that had been damaged in a storm. It required precision, teamwork, and careful attention to detail. She discovered that her own hands, once used only for temporary or unimportant tasks, could create lasting results that benefited the ranch and its animals. Another day, she assisted in coordinating a delivery of hay and supplies. The task seemed simple at first, but it involved careful planning, communication, and adaptability. Clara realized that meaningful work often required more than skill. It required thoughtfulness, patience, and a willingness to anticipate challenges before they arose. By the time the delivery was complete, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that her effort had made the ranch's operations smoother and more efficient. Clara also began to form deeper connections with the people around her. The ranch workers, initially distant and cautious, started to trust her judgment and value her input. She learned their routines, listened to their stories, and offered help without hesitation. The small gestures, checking on a coworker, offering advice, or simply sharing a laugh during a long day, strengthened the bonds of community. Clara realized that meaningful work was not only about tasks and results, but also about relationships, collaboration, and shared purpose. One afternoon, while walking along the edge of the pasture, Clara paused to watch a group of calves playing near a fence. Their small bodies tumbled over one another, noses bumping, tails swishing, and tiny hooves kicking up dust. She felt a sense of wonder and gratitude, realizing how connected she had become to this land and its creatures. She had once chased jobs for convenience or pay, but now she had discovered a life where every action mattered, every choice contributed, and every effort left a mark. Hank arrived later that day, riding slowly along the fence line. He had a calm, thoughtful expression as he dismounted and approached Clara. "You've done well," he said simply, "not just with the work but with how you've become part of this place." Clara smiled, feeling a quiet pride. "It's more than I imagined. I feel like I belong here, like my work actually matters." Hank nodded. "That's the difference between work and meaningful work. It's not about the hours you put in or the money you earn. It's about seeing the impact of your effort and feeling proud of it." "You found that here, Clara?" Clara's heart swelled with gratitude. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the towns she had visited, the jobs she had turned down, and the cafe where a simple question had changed everything. She realized that every decision, every moment of patience had led her to this point. The life she had once searched for in uncertainty and hesitation was now tangible, alive, and fulfilling. Weeks turned into months, and Clara settled fully into the rhythm of ranch life. She became skilled at balancing physical tasks with planning and coordination, learning to anticipate needs and solve problems efficiently. She gained confidence in her abilities, understanding that competence came from practice, observation, and dedication. The challenges that once seemed daunting became opportunities to grow, and she approached each day with curiosity and determination. Evenings became a time of reflection and quiet joy. Clara would sit on a hill overlooking the ranch, watching the sun dip below the horizon and painting the sky with shades of orange, pink, and purple. The land was alive with movement and sound, and she felt a profound connection to the world around her. She thought about her past, the uncertainty she had felt, and the moment she met Hank in the cafe. That single conversation had sparked a journey that transformed her life. Clara realized that meaningful work was not simply a goal. It was a process, a way of living that combined effort, reflection, and contribution. It was about caring deeply, acting intentionally, and valuing the impact of one's choices. She understood that work could be more than a means to survive. It could be a source of purpose, pride, and fulfillment. One afternoon, as she helped repair a barn roof, Hank approached, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He handed one to her and leaned against the wall, watching the sun filter through the wooden beams. "You've grown a lot since the day I met you at the cafe," he said. "Not just in skill, but in understanding. You see what truly matters and you act on it." Clara accepted the coffee, smiling. "I couldn't have done it without guidance and without taking the time to figure out what I really wanted. I've learned that patience and honesty with myself are as important as hard work." Hank nodded. "Exactly, that's what changes everything. You didn't just find a job, you found a life that fits you. and it's one you can shape, grow with, and be proud of every single day. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and Clara became an integral part of the ranch community. Her skills, dedication, and thoughtfulness earned the respect of everyone around her. She found joy in the successes, learned from the mistakes, and developed a resilience she hadn't realized she possessed. The ranch was no longer just a place of work. It was a place of growth, learning, and belonging. Clara often thought back to the morning at Mabel's cafe when a simple question had opened a door she hadn't known was closed. "What kind of work are you looking for?" Hank had asked. It was not just a question about employment. It was a question that challenged her to examine her values, her goals, and her purpose. That single moment had set in motion a chain of events that led to a life full of meaning, contribution, and fulfillment. By the time the year passed, Clara had transformed. She had learned practical skills, discovered the power of patience, and understood the depth of meaningful work. The ranch had become her home, the animals her companions, and the people her community. Every sunrise brought new challenges, every task carried purpose, and every evening offered reflection and gratitude. Standing on the hill one final evening, watching the sunset cast a warm glow across the fields, Clara felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had arrived at this life not by taking the easy path, but by listening to herself, embracing patience, and pursuing what mattered. She had found work that challenged her, fulfilled her, and allowed her to grow. She had found meaning, connection, and a place to belong. And she knew, with a certainty that warmed her heart, that she would never forget the lesson she had learned. That true fulfillment comes not from convenience, comfort, or speed, but from purpose, perseverance, and the courage to seek what truly matters.